Right. So you're working hard. You're trying your best, but something still feels off. Is that nagging sense that resources are limited, that success is a zero sum game? That's the scarcity mind, quietly sabotaging your potential. But imagine if you could reprogram your brain to see infinite possibilities instead of endless robots. This episode will show you how to ditch limitation, cultivate an abundance mentality. Transforms every area of your life. If you've ever been impacted by the justice, whether you wore the uniform, waited on the phone, or carried the label of returning citizen, you already know scarcity. Scarcity of freedom, scarcity of time with your kids, scarcity of second chances. And when you come home, scarcity doesn't magically disappear. It just changes clothes. It shows up as denied applications, closed doors, quiet judgments, and that internal voice that says, don't get your hopes up. So today, we're naming them, we're challenging it, we are replacing it with something more accurate, more powerful, and more honest, an abundance rooted in agency, community, and skill. Welcome to Conviction. Believe it or not, there are some invisible chains that pretty much grips everyone that has been incarcerated, families, just justice impacted people. It's a set of chains. They're invisible. Because those chains we need to name are called scarcity. Scarcity doesn't always announce itself loudly. It rarely kicks the door in. Most of the time, it whispers, shows up as caution disguised as wisdom, fear disguised as realism, and limitation disguised as just how life works. That's just how it is. For the justice impacted people and their families, scarcity isn't a theory. It's a lived condition that often outlasts incarceration itself. At its core, scarcity myth is the belief that there's never enough. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough opportunity, um, not enough forgiveness, not enough grace. And when you've been system impacted, that belief doesn't come from imagination. It comes from experience. You've seen doors close. You watched applications get rejected without explanation. You felt the quiet pause when you disclose your past. Over time, the external barriers harden into internal conclusions. They become fact. Now, scarcity becomes the lens through which you see everything. Okay? You start to believe that opportunities are rare and fragile, that if you miss one chance, there won't be another. You believe success is a zero sum game, that if someone else wins, you inevitably lose. That there are only a few seats at a table, and people like you were never meant to sit over there anyway. So, for the families of incarcerated people, scarcity shows up differently, but just as powerful. It's emotional scar, right? Missed milestones, divided attention, stretched patience. It's the financial scare, like court costs, commissary, travel, lost income, having to answer those collect calls. It's relational scarcity. I'm having to be strong for everyone while quietly running on empty. And over time, families begin to expect less, hope less, and plan smaller, not because they lack ambition, but because disappointment has been too expensive. Historically, scarcity thinking has been reinforced by systems that profit from limitation. Um, Communities have been like overwhelmed out resourced, over policed, and undereducated, then blamed for not rising above conditions they didn't create. The message has been consistent. There's not enough to go around. You're lucky to get what you got. That message get passed down, normalized, and almost internalized to little kids. But here's where the myth reveals itself. And I want to say it as plainly as I can. While resources may be limited, in certain moments, possibility is never limited. Scarcity convinces you that constraints are permanent truths rather than temporary conditions. It turns your circumstances into identities. It says, you know what, because this is how it's been, this is how it will always be. That's the invisible chain. That's the mental block. Scarcity thinking keeps people in mental survival mode long after the physical danger has passed. It keeps returning citizens like myself playing defense instead of offense. And I kind of got out of it. I'm working on it, right? It keeps families bracing for loss instead of building for growth. And the most dangerous part, scarcity feels responsible. It feels like it's real. It sounds like I'm just being smart by not taking a chance or believing that all things are possible. But often that's just a fake wisdom. It becomes conditioning. Now, debunking the scarcity myth doesn't mean denying the reality of barriers. It means you have to refuse to let barriers define the ceiling of your life. It means recognizing that many of the limits you believe in are inherited beliefs, not proven facts. These were things that were given to you. Your mind has somehow grabbed onto it. That is true. Now, scarcity is powerful because it hides in plain sight. But once you see it, it loses its grip. And that awareness is the first crack in the chain. That awareness is the first crack in the chain. So let's go beyond the zero sum, right? Win or you lose. This is how scarcity can limit you. Reentry is already one of the hardest transitions a human being can ever make. You're expected to reintegrate into a world that kept moving without you. Often, you end up with fewer rights than you had before. You have fewer resources. And on top of that, you've been out of the loop for years or whatever. For me, it was 15 years. And then you have, far more scrutiny than the average person. Housing can be limited. Employment options are narrow. And don't get me wrong, a lot of it was built on choice, right? We never deny accountability, or we never deny responsibility or choices, what they actually do to this thing. So we are not on here crying. We're just telling you a story, right? We're telling you how it is. Transportation, technology, credit, and even social norms feel unfamiliar. And layered on top of all of that is the unspoken pressure to prove that you deserve to be like free again, or you deserve to be out here. In that type of environment, scarcity thinking doesn't just show up. It feels justified. When you're coming home and everything seems limited, it's easy to believe life itself is a zero-sum game. If someone else gets the job, that just means there wasn't one for me. If another returning citizen gets funded, that means the resources ran out, right? And none for me. If you say no to the first opportunity offered, you might not get another shot. Scarcity tells you that survival requires grabbing whatever is available, holding it tightly, and never letting go. Now, here's the trap. The zero-sum thinking trap. This is what's going to keep you locked into reaction mode, not strategy mode, reaction mode. For many returning citizens, the fear of failure, like falling back into the system, drives their decision making. You take work that drains you because you're afraid of not having work at all. You can't pay your probation fees, right? So you just take whatever. You stay silent in rooms where your voice could add value, but you don't want to draw attention to yourself, so you avoid it. You avoid all risk, even healthy risk, because the consequences of failure feel heavier for you than for pretty much everyone else. They feel heavier for you, right? Because we know what it's like to be away. Now, this scarcity thinking shrinks your options before you even test your options. It's like you can't never hit if you never take a shot, right? It also fuels competition where collaboration would be more powerful. You start to see other justice impacted people as rivals instead of allies. You compare your progress timelines. Oh, he got this and that and that, and he got out before me. Or he got this, that, and that. He got out after me. You quietly measure who's doing better. That's what I'm saying. Who got home first? Who got the break you didn't? In comparison, especially on the scarcity, because it doesn't motivate. It pretty much corrodes your trust. Okay? It pretty much corrodes everything. It creates resentment, self-doubt, isolation, all those things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. But the psychological cost is real. Zero-sum thinking heightens stress and anxiety because your nervous system stays on high alert all the time. You feel like you're always one mistake away from losing everything. That pressure doesn't just impact work, it bleeds into your relationships, parenting, and eventually your vision of who you are, your self-worth. When everything feels fragile, joy feels irresponsible, right? You're having too much fun. You can't take a break. It has to be something on the other end that I'm missing. Rest feels unsafe. Growth feels risky. And that's what I dealt with a lot when I first got home and was trying to make my mark, so to speak, or let people know that I'm here, that I've changed, that I'm trying to make amends where I can, right? Very important. Can't make amends everywhere. That's what I'm saying. You just can't make them everywhere. To stay on the topic, like you feel a tremendous amount of pressure to prove that you deserve or you deserve to be here. Even organizations that serve returning citizens aren't immune. Scarcity shows up in programs when they compete instead of coordinating, when information is guarded instead of like shared with everybody. Like when there are funding opportunities, it's basically treated like a limited prize rather than a renewable resource that's available. You just got to wait your time. The result is fragmentation. Good people doing good work, but in silos that limit collective impact that can have far greater good or play into the greater good of more people than one. And yet, here's the uncomfortable truth. Scarcity thinking often creates the very limitation it fears. When you assume there's not enough, you stop exploring. You assume when you assume responsibility or opportunity is rare, you stop asking questions. You start thinking that your past disqualifies you. You stop positioning yourself for rooms that need your experience. Scarcity doesn't just describe the struggle of reentry, it pretty much magnifies the struggle of reentry. Acknowledging these challenges of reentry is necessary, and that's what we aim to do on the Conviction Fiction podcast. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Go check us out. Because we're not going to deny the opportunity for growth. Accepting the idea that challenges mean your success must come at someone else's expense, though, that's where the zero sum lie takes root, right? Abundance doesn't mean pretending the deck isn't stacked. Doesn't it? It basically means that you got to understand that growth, knowledge, skills, relationships, and impact are not resources that are limited. When one returning citizen succeeds, it doesn't shrink the field, it expands it. It creates proof, it creates pathways, it creates precedent. Reentry is hard. The system is real, guys. If you have a chance, go back and listen to the prison industrial complex episode. The barriers are real, but the belief that there's only room for a few to make it, that's the part we have to unlearn. We really got to unlearn that, because the moment you stop seeing life as a zero sum game is the moment that you stop playing defense and start building something bigger than survival. Now, I'm going to give you the abundance blueprint right now. I'm going to show you how to shift your internal narrative so it can help you, the people around you, your community, because it's important. That's what this podcast is about. We're about uplifting those justice impacted citizens, families. You've been behind bars, know someone that has, someone that you love, because that scarcity mindset is real. Now, if scarcity is learned, then abundance can be relearned. That's my nugget right there. Right? That's what I'm giving you right now. I'm giving you the code, right? That's the part many people miss. They can't see the code because of the program. Okay? A lot of that went over y'all head. Can't see the code because of the program. Now, an abundance mindset isn't something you're born with. And it's definitely not something most justice impacted people were encouraged to develop. Scarcity was trained into you through systems, experiences, disappointments, and survival. Many of us did not have an abundance representative to teach us that there's a better way, right? Now, shifting your internal narrative isn't about pretending everything is fine, like all is okie dokie in whatever world you're in. No, it's about consciously choosing a different operating system. Now, abundance starts internally because your thoughts quietly dictate your behavior long before your circumstances will ever change. Long before your circumstances change, your thoughts, that's where the abundance lies. Now, for many returning citizens, the internal narrative sounds like, hey, I already messed up. I'm 20 steps behind. I have to take what I can get. Like, people won't take me seriously because of my past. Now, these thoughts feel logical because they've been reinforced by rejection, stigma, structural barriers. But logical doesn't always mean accurate. Logical doesn't always mean accurate, and it definitely doesn't mean permanent. An abundance mindset begins with a simple but radical belief. Your future is not exhausted by your past. Your future is not predicated by your past. This isn't just like motivational talk, guys. It's reframing your identity. That's what we try to do here to change the narrative. When we say change the narrative and we're changing lives, we're not doing no small talk, bro. We're not trying to gas you. Scarcity is what ties you. Scarcity ties who you are to what you lack. Abundance separates the two. It allows you to say, hey, yeah, I have obstacles, but I also have assets, right? Time inside taught discipline, adaptability, observation, emotional intelligence, and more importantly, resilience. Those are not soft traits. Those are leadership traits. Scarcity convinces you that don't count because they weren't learned in like traditional spaces, right? Scarcity convinces you that all those skills don't count because they weren't learned in colleges or dorm rooms or universities. Abundance recognizes value wherever it was forward, right? So when I talk about the abundance mentality, I was talking with my wife the other day. We were just having conversations, that's kind of what I do. This is not like something I get on the podcast to talk about, but just a reshift of the mindset is the world of difference. Think about this. In the morning, when you get up, you might go to a job. You don't like the people there or whatever. And I was going through this. I was like, oh, I hate to get up. I don't want to get up to go to work. I don't want to get up to go to work. I don't feel like going to work. And my wife and I got to talking about it. She's like, why don't you want to get up to go to work? And I was like, oh, I don't like people, blah, 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 blah. And the reframing of the whole conversation was like just a couple of words to say that I'm grateful to have the chance to get up to go to work. Right? From I don't want to go to work to I'm grateful that I have a chance to go to work. That's a shift in the mentality. That's a shift just by a couple of words. And that first shift, right? That first shift in your awareness, like changing the narrative, is going to be critical to your growth. You have to catch the scarcity story as it's being told in your own head. You got to pay attention to moments when you automatically shrink your expectations or your gratitude. You got to catch that. When you disqualify yourself before anyone else does, and you say, that's not for me. Why I got to do this? Without any evidence, those thoughts aren't true. They're habits. Now, the second step is interruption. When a limiting belief shows up, challenge it directly. Ask yourself, who told me this? Is it always true? What's one example that can disprove it? Because most people can name at least one moment when they adapted, learned, or succeeded under pressure. Scarcity ignores those moments. Abundance, that's who collects them. Now, gratitude, like I said, it plays a powerful role here, especially for justice impacted people. No, I don't want to go to work, but I'm grateful that I have the chance to go to work. Now, not that gratitude that dismisses pain. We ain't talking about that kind of gratitude. We're talking about gratitude that anchors you in what's real and available now. Every time you intentionally acknowledge what you have, your skills, your relationships, your health, your clarity, your peace of mind, you're training your brain to scan for resources instead of threats. That's no spiritual fluff, guys. It's neuroscience. Okay. Visualization always reinforces that training. When you consistently picture yourself operating from stability instead of survival, showing up prepared, speaking confidently, building something sustainable, you reduce the emotional shock when opportunities actually arrive. Your brain treats this preparation and rehearsal as experience. I'm used to success. I prepare for success. What's that old adage? You don't have to get ready if you stay ready. Over time, your internal narrative begins to shift from I can't afford it to I can afford to learn, right? Those narratives shift. Like, you don't have to play it safe, but you can play it smart, right? There may not be enough room for you, but you can create value out of this opportunity. This shift doesn't happen like overnight. Not going to tell you that. And it doesn't happen without effort. But once the internal story changes, behavior follows. You start applying for rooms that you would have avoided. You start asking better questions. You start seeing reentry not as narrow as a narrow path, but not something that you got to tiptoe across, but as a landscape with multiple routes forward. Abundance isn't about ignoring reality. I'll never tell you that. It's about refusing to let reality dictate your ceiling. And once the narrative changes internally, the external world starts responding differently. Not because the world suddenly became fair or shifting around you, but because you did. You shifted, and the world opens up for you. And you have to cultivate this mindset. You have to cultivate this narrative. You have to create this narrative, and you're going to need ways to make these opportunities happen for you. And there are some strategies that I want to lend to the audience for practicing abundance. Those strategies about abundance don't come from like me wishing harder, or it came from systems, repetition, discipline, especially when my circumstances were heavy. For just as impacted people like myself, strategies have to work in the real world. I don't need the notion of it. I don't need no dream world. I need to see it, right? If time may be limited. I might have limited money, and I'm always under constant pressure. So anything else is just noise. I need to see it. So let's get practical. Let's just break it down. First thing you have to do is to redefine what resources mean. I'm talking about beyond money. Redefine what are your resources. This is one of the biggest traps when it comes to scarcity. When you believe that opportunity starts with money, it rarely does. It rarely does. What actually moves the needle early on is utility, what you can do reliably and well. So you got to ask yourself a couple of questions. What problems do I know how to solve because of what I lived through? When you ask yourself that question, what problems do I know how to solve because of what I've lived through? You're creating that value, right? You're finding your value because you can solve problems for other people because you've lived through some stuff, right? That's your value. You have to find your value. At any moment, go back and listen to this episode. Definitely check out some of the previous episodes on the convictionfictionpodcast.com. You also see some valuable merch up there if you want to wear your message. Go check it out. It's pretty cool. I got on one of the sweatshirts now. It's the Changing the Narrative sweatshirt. Go check it out. Let's talk about skills. What skills did survival sharpen for you? Communication? Was it patience? Was it conflict management? Could you talk yourself out of a jam or de-escalate some things? That's value. And then, within your life right now, what do you already do consistently that people trust? Those answers are resources. They translate into value long before they translate into income. People don't invest in ideas, they invest in people who execute. Number two, I want you guys to build consistency before you start chasing. Okay? A lot of returning citizens get discouraged because they expect progress to be fast. It's not going to be fast. What it is, though, is compounding. Consistency is what is going to separate those who are rebuilding from people who are staying stuck, right? One resume sent every day will trump 20 sent once a month, right? 1 hour a day learning some type of trade will beat any motivational binge that you might go on. Now, if you have a relationship, you nurture that relationship over time, it's going to beat a room full of business cards you just out there handing them out. Just nurture that relationship. So scarcity will always tell you, if it's not working immediately, it's not working at all. Abundance will tell you, let me stack these small wins. We talk about small wins on this podcast. If you've never heard me say small wins, I know you lying. I know you lying. Small wins, small victories. That is what's going to take you over the top. And it's a practical strategy that can get you out of the scarcity mentality. Now, number three, pretty high on the list, should be almost number one, because you got to leverage what you're around, right? Not perfection. You don't need access to the perfect opportunity. You need proximity to people who are already doing what you want to do. You have to leverage what you're around. Okay. One of the most important things, though, what are you around? You need to figure that out. And what that means is that showing up consistently to the same spaces, asking specific questions, not vague ones, but specific questions on how to do something, and offering help before asking for help, right? Being around things, or proximity around things, it creates familiarity. Familiar with something, people start to trust you. People are familiar with you, they trust you. And trust creates opportunity. This is especially important for justice impacted people because trust often matters more than any credential that you may have, any degree that you may have earned. Okay. And speaking of degrees, like, I guess this really isn't. Yeah, it could be step 4, practical. Let's keep it practical. Treat learning like it's a job. Skill development isn't optional. It's basically your insurance. Like, the more skills that you have, the less any single door can control your future. So the more skills that you have, it's going to open up more doors for you than anything. You got to pick skills with market demand, not hype, right? Trades, technological literacy, AI, communication and sales, operations and logistics. Now, you need to learn something. Then schedule learning the same way you schedule work, right? You know you got to get up to go to work. Guess what? You need to put in your schedule. You need to get up and go learn. Scarcity thinking treats learning like a luxury. Abundance treats it like survival, because it is. You have to keep learning. Number 5 on my list, and this is something that was very personal for me, is like I had to start tracking my effort, not just the outcomes that I was given, but the effort that I was given. Because outcomes fluctuate, effort compounds, right? I had to start to learn how to track how many applications I submitted per day, how many hours I learned, how many hours I trained, how many conversations I started, the skills that I practiced. I had to concentrate on those, because even though I was doing these things and I didn't see the outcome, it gave me the motivation, like, okay, I'm putting in the effort, right? This keeps you focused when results lag. Progress doesn't always show up as a breakthrough. It shows up as capacity. Like learning how to do a podcast, learning how to write books. I just kept at it. And then the breakthrough, right? And then when the breakthrough came, I became so adept at writing, or if I'm a guest on another person's show, I pretty much had trained myself up. So it was something that was familiar for me. And that's the truth many people won't say out loud. It's exhausting as fuck. Reentry plus rebuilding plus consistency can feel like running uphill with 3,000 pounds on your back. But abundance isn't built on ease. It's built on reliability, on doing the work even when no one else is clapping for you. You lived it, man. You've lived it. You already know. Consistency doesn't just pay off. It changes who you become. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to be that. And once your identity shifts from trying to survive to someone who shows up daily, opportunity has no choice but to respond. And let's respond to you. Okay? Now, your abundant life, man, I just gave you some practical strategies that I've used. Like four strategies, 5 strategies. That abundant future, it can help unleash your untapped potential. So when you look back on your journey, especially if you've been just as impacted, let's take a moment to look back, reflect. How easy is it to measure your life by what was taken? You know, the years lost, like the time missed, doors that may have closed. What we're trying to say is that abundance asks you a different question. What did you build anyway? Despite all those setbacks, despite all the time lost, what did you build anyway? What strength did you develop under this pressure? What discipline did you earn the hard way? And this perspective, guys, it carries over. It can be taught in any classroom. Your abundant future doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up quietly through follow through routines that don't make headlines, through days when nothing dramatic happened, but you still showed up for yourself, for your community, for the people that rely on you. That's where untapped potential lives. Now, every returning citizen who commits to growth expands what's possible for the next person. You may not see it in the moment, but your consistency becomes evident. Evidence that people can come home and build businesses, that families can hear, that leadership doesn't require perfect paths, just accountability and vision. Okay? Abundance isn't about becoming like someone new, man. It's about fully becoming who you already are without shrinking to fit other people's expectations. It's about deciding that your future won't be dictated by the worst chapter of your story, and that same system that tried to define you doesn't get to put a cap on you. And here's the part people underestimate. Abundance spreads. Yeah, it spreads. It starts getting over into the lives of people around you. When you stop operating from scarcity, your kids will feel it. Your partner will feel it. Your community feels it. And you stop competing for crumbs and start contributing to the table. You'll stop asking for permission and start creating pathways that shift. That shift doesn't just change outcomes. It changes the entire atmosphere around you. And don't get it twisted, guys. The work doesn't end here. It doesn't end with mindset. It continues with those habits, the discipline, and those reminders of who you're becoming. That's why it matters that you surround yourself with positive things, with people that are traveling that path. But listen to this podcast. What you listen to, what you wear, what messages you carry with you daily, that's important. Now, everything about the Conviction Fiction, this podcast, everything we build, content, conversations, and even our merchandise is meant to reflect that growth. That brand isn't static. It's constantly evolving, expanding, and becoming more intentional, just like you. Every piece is a reminder that transformation is real, that progress compounds, and that your story didn't stop when the sentence ended. If something you wear can spark the conversation, shift the mindset, or remind you of the work you're doing internally, that's not fashion. That's alignment. So here's my call to action. And it's simple. Keep building, keep learning, keep showing up, especially on the days it feels slow. Start small, even if you have to. Start small if you have to, but stay consistent. Scarcity depends and feeds on hesitation, wherein abundance responds to the movement. You're not chasing a fantasy. I promise you. You're constructing a future, changing the narrative, brick by brick, habit by habit, choice by choice. And the truth is, there's more room at the table than you were ever told. The truth is, there's more room at the table than you were ever told. This is the Conviction Fiction, and abundance isn't coming, it's being built.